Hello, and welcome back to the Drosscast podcast. We are half of the Dross Squad today. We are doing the interview of the lovely Slay.
Heyo, that's me.
So, you all have heard her voice for the last few of these, because you decided to interview all of us.
Yes.
So, I'm sure a lot of conversations you've had has also been about yourself as well. So, I think the listeners have gotten a pretty good idea of some background to Slay. But I think we'll...
More in relations to everybody else.
Right. So they know how you fit in with a group, but I think
Right.
we'll get the group to know what makes Slay Slay.
Hey.
So I want to start with, you thought of the idea for the interviews.
Yes, I did.
So was there anything that you would, aside from I know our final question, which we'll get to, but was there anything you wanted to make sure the listeners knew about all of us?
No, I just really like the idea of interviews because, I find that one-on-one interviews are really interesting with, other podcasts I've listened to. I brought up in a different podcast, I listened to the Procrastinators podcast, and they have interviews. Theirs are 3 hours each, so...
Jesus.
So that's, a little bit more. And they don't necessarily... They just talk about, stories. And that's where a lot of them are, really funny, because it's just funny stories that they tell, and... I don't know, that's what I enjoy, so I thought I'd introduce that to our podcast, because I think we have some pretty funny stories, or at least interesting stories between the four of us.
Yeah, I agree. I think, so on podcasts that I listen to, which I will admit are not that many, I only listen to a couple, but I haven't seen or heard, I suppose, podcasters really just talk about themselves and interview each other, so I thought that was a really cool idea. And I think it's really interesting in our podcast because I don't know that it's usual that it's two married couples together.
Right.
So I think that's a little bit different dynamic. We're not just a group of friends. We also have that other side of the relationships.
Right. And I think all of our relationships together are very different, but they all, vibe really well. So,
right.
Obviously, the relationship between you and me, we have been friends for so long. We have our dynamic between each other. And then... You with Akko are married, so you guys have your dynamic together. Me and Bob, we're married, we have our dynamic together. And then the boys, they have their whole thing. You knew Bob from working. I knew Akko, obviously, from your guys' relationship.
Yeah.
It's been long, so
right.
I've gotten to know him. So I just feel like everybody's, connection to each other makes it that much more interesting.
Well, I think it's really cool in our particular foursome that you and Akko share a lot of similar interests, and
right.
Myself and Bob are usually watching you two weave out over things and can just go off on our own conversation so that we don't have to necessarily be on your level all the time. So I think that's really interesting. I think the listeners might not get that if just hearing the four of us. So I think this is a good way of having...
Sorry, we're doing this in my basement, and somebody just turned on water, and that's what if you're hearing a weird noise, that's what it is. It's my pipes.
Yeah. No, we're just canoeing down the river right now. What are you talking about?
I mean, that would probably be 10 times more interesting.
Joke's on us. We don't go outside. What is sunlight?
No.
So let's kick it off. What I guess sticks out to you as far as growing up? Tell us a little bit about your family and how that all was.
So I'm the oldest of 2. So it's me and my younger sister. We are very we're very similar, I feel outwards personality-wise. Very similar in those regards. We don't look alike, though. Me and my sister don't look alike. But we are very different value-wise. So my sister's priorities in her life and what she has classic younger sister or younger sibling syndrome, where she's all about her freedom and she's total go with the flow, and she'll change her mind and go in a different direction at the drop of the hat, where that sounds terrifying to me. I like the security blanket of having a plan and having in traditional, I'm very traditional in my outlook on things, and if that deviates at all, I get very, very anxious about it. I mean, I like change. I'm very good with change, and I'm very free-flowing with change, but it needs to be expressed in the plan before I can...
Right.
It just can't
You have to have a plan to change. It can't just come out of nowhere.
Right. It needs to at least be brought up. We can't just completely go off the rails at a drop of the hat. That's not okay with me, but I am pretty good at change, and I can roll with punches pretty well. So.
Right. Right. I think it's interesting that you say you and your sister don't look alike because, in my opinion, you do.
Really?
But that,
how
I mean,
strange.
me coming from a pretty blended family, I don't think I look like either of my siblings.
You
A
look
little
your
bit like
sister.
my sister, but
Right, you look like your sister.
me and my brother don't even look like to be from the same family,
No.
even like distantly
No, you
related.
don't.
So
No, you don't.
I think my perspective is a little different than most, but I think you guys look quite alike. And
Well, I'm 5'9", so I'm pretty tall for a female. My sister's like 5'2".
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's true. But I feel like your features, like you both have the blonde hair, the light eyes, like
Right.
similar skin tone.
I suppose.
So I think in the features you guys do look alike. But I think it's kind of interesting looking. I mean, we grew up together, so
Right.
I mean, you spent a lot of time with my family. I spent a lot of time with your family. I think because my family was a little bit more mixed up, it was kind of interesting to see since you guys are a very traditional family. Like you guys share the same parents, everything like that.
Mom, Dad, they're still together, so it's not like I'm from a broken household. Although I hate that term. That's such a weird term.
I mean, I don't consider my household broken, even though technically both my siblings
don't
aren't related.
But no divorce, and then
Yeah.
I'm the oldest, and then my sister.
Right.
And so
But I think
we lived in a suburb, and we owned a regular house, and my parents held regular jobs. So
yeah, so you're a pretty average American family.
oh, absolutely.
And I think it's
Nothing
interesting
special
though
or
because of
stand out.
how close you guys are and the fact that you guys did like you're very traditional and you're pretty close in age as well.
Yeah.
I feel like out of all of our friends in our friend group, you and your sister probably have had the most adverse relationship between siblings.
Yeah, I mean, compared to most, I don't know, like, just, I guess, comparing between our friend group. So,
Yeah.
you and H, and I guess not really S, because S is...
Her siblings are way too
Are way older. I mean, she's never been, like...
She didn't ever grow up in a household.
She
with
didn't
them.
grow up in a household with them, so she never really had any sort of relationship. I mean, they're sisters,
Yeah.
so they hang out, but, you know,
But it wasn't
nothing
like that
special.
sibling rivalry that
Right.
you get when you grow up together.
But me and my sister, we are constantly at odds. I think it's better now that we're both away from each other and we don't see each other as, like, nearly as much.
Yeah.
But, I mean, still, we're pretty testy when we get together with each other.
Right. And I think ever since you had your son, I think
Right.
I think because you have that now mutual, I don't know, thing to bond over, because like that was kind of how it was with me and my brother. I got a lot closer with him once they had my nieces. I think now it doesn't focus so much on you and her just going at each other, because now you have that third like little person that you can, like you said, you guys have been taking steps in the right direction, and I think you're both really close with your parents at least from what I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really close with both my mom and my dad. I chat with them regularly on the phone. I mean, since moving out, I probably talk to them more now than I did when I actually lived with them. But
What did I'm curious to know what your parents and I guess sister too thought about when you first started seeing Bob.
they were pretty neutral. Like, I don't know. Okay, so my parents are not big excited to, like, usually when like a big event happens in a life, your parents are like, oh my gosh, oh, that's so exciting. Like when we announced that oh my god,
Really attractive.
okay, sorry. But like when we announced that I was pregnant, we told Bob's parents, obviously, and it was the classic reaction, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. When we told my parents, it was like, oh, that's really exciting. Like, that's just my parent. Like,
Yeah.
they're not real excitable people. So when I started dating Bob, they're just like, oh, are you dating the guy that keeps spending the night at our house? Okay, that's good. Like,
That's a good point. So I thought, after your high school sweetheart relationship ended,
right.
and you and Bob started seeing each other, and the fact that your parents let him sleep over prior to you guys really, like, being together for a super long time.
Right.
To me, that seems so odd of character for your parents, because growing up, like we've talked about before, you were, like, the most sheltered. So I was like,
Yeah.
what? Slay's parents did what now? Like,
No, and
I thought they would have such an opposition to that, but they were, like, super cool with all that.
And honestly, it was kind of the whole, like, my parents are pretty chill for how sheltered I was, and how, like, it wasn't because they forced it. It was, I just think it was like a lack of opportunities. Like,
Yeah.
I never really had the opportunity to be unsheltered, so they just continued to shelter me until
Right.
like whatever. So like when I had my high school sweetheart, we dated for all of our high school career. I started dating him when I was a freshman, and then through the first semester of college. So 4+ years.
Yeah.
And by that time, they're used to the idea of their daughter being in a relationship. And so towards the end of it, they were letting me, spend the night at his house. When I go to college, they knew I'd go to his dorm and, spend the night there and do stuff. So they were kind of already okay with the idea. So then when I think Bob came around, they're just like, well, she did it before.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
That's
true. What's the worst that's going to happen now? It's already been done. So
that's true. I mean, I guess I'm thinking with the lens of, like, when I first started seeing Akko, like, my parents did actually let him sleep over in high school, but it was mostly, like, when he was too tired to drive, and they just felt, because once he's tired, he just gets in one of those moods where he can't wake up. But he would always sleep on the couch. Like, my parents didn't just have him go sleep in my room.
Yeah.
But I guess that's different because you were already in college when you started seeing Bob, and you had already had that long relationship where your parents had been exposed. So that makes sense. But I think, Bob gets along pretty well with your family from what I've seen, which I think is...
Yeah, he actually fit, like, right in. It was kind of crazy because I felt like there was never that awkward transition. It was like he kind of showed up in like, my life as, like, a romantic. Because, we worked together. Mm-hmm. We didn't start dating immediately after we met.
Right.
But he kind of showed up. He ate dinner with my family, and then, like, at dinner, he was just like, oh, okay, yeah, this is your family, cool. And then, like, every day after that, it was just like, oh, yeah, I'll eat, yeah. I'm a part of the crew now. And it just kind of stuck that way.
I'm an honorary member, so.
Right, like, he's just like, oh, well, yeah, this is, of course. I'm here all the time. I might as well eat, dinner with your family. And I might as well, like, now him and my dad hang out more than I hang out with my dad. Like, he goes out and does stuff with my dad all the time.
I think that's hilarious. And it's so funny with your dad, like, getting into Pokemon Go.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's funny because, like, even I've, like, texted your dad about stuff with Pokemon Go. I'm like, it's so weird if I would have, like, told, like, 12-year-old me, like, you're texting Slay's dad and just, like, making plans to do stuff like that seems so foreign, but...
Well, and then him and my mom are even close because, like, when my mom goes to hockey games, she invites Bob. Like, she doesn't even invite me. She, like, texts Bob and is like, hey, do you want to come to the hockey game? They went to the Motley Crue concert together. He got 2 tickets, and he took my mom. So, I'm just, yeah, it was just kind of oddly seamless that he just kind of flowed into the family.
Well, that's good. And I think for the most part, you get along pretty well with his family as well. They live further away, so, like, you guys aren't, I would say you're not as, like, you don't hang out with them really one-on-one or anything like that because it's not like they're,
don't get me wrong, they're great people. Like, they are so kind-hearted and they have the best of intentions. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I wasn't as seamless into the interaction, and so I still deal with, like, awkward situations with with, like, his side of the family, and it's just we're different people. Like, me and his mom are very, very different people.
Right.
So.
That happens. I mean, you guys have, I think, given that you guys are very different and you have really different personalities, you guys still, like, get along fine. And it's not like, I have some friends that, like, hate their in-laws and, like, can't even be in the same room with them. So it's not, like, that type of situation at all. It's just that you guys don't maybe go get your nails done together and talk about stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say we're on, like, I call up his mom and I'm like, oh, you want to go to brunch together? Absolutely not. We're not at that level. But at the same time, it's like, we'll hang out. We'll have dinner as a family. And that's fine.
That's good. I think, you mentioned it slightly so you met Bob at work. Mm-hmm. We all worked at the Outlet Mall together.
We did.
And actually, all of our friends that we've talked about on this podcast have worked at the same place.
Polo. Real Polo.
I think everyone aside from Akko, he didn't work there, but...
Right.
So it's interesting that all of our friend group knew Bob prior to you, like, dating him. I know you met him before our other friends. I was the only one that worked at Polo.
Right, but I didn't date him. I didn't date him for a long time into that employment.
Yeah, because we all worked there during high school, and you didn't date him till we were, me and H were gone out of town for college, and then, S was still working there for a while.
She was the last one to leave.
Yeah, I was going to say, her timeline was working there. I don't know to a T, but we all knew him on, like, at least a coworker level before knowing him as Slay's boyfriend. So when I heard you guys were first dating, I was like, wait, what? That's so weird. Like, she's dating Bob? Like, okay. And so that was like, because I had to, like, kind of switch gears because I'd only ever seen you with your high school boyfriend.
Right.
And so now I'm, like, switching gears. I'm like, okay, like, But
and
then
that was also kind of strange because I dated my ex for 4.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then, no, it was 4 years on the dot because he came over and
that's
he
right.
broke
It was your
up
anniversary.
on our anniversary. So it was 4 years on the dot. And then 2 months later, I started dating Bob. So it was like a pretty quick turnaround and kind of out of left field because obviously up to that point I only considered him a coworker because I was dating somebody else. And then within those 2 months, like obviously we chatted and then we started dating. So it was just kind of a crazy thing.
Well, and for me, because I wasn't here, so I mean, you
were up there.
I actually never spent time with single Slay. Like I really did.
You didn't.
As an adult, I've never known you single because I was gone like for that 2 month period that you were. Ooh, juicy. Spill the tea. So for me, like to switch that gear because I'd never seen you guys like be flirty together or anything because you were always in a different relationship. Right. So until like I came down and I don't actually remember the first time hanging out with you two as a couple. Like I remember the first time
I don't remember either.
Like meeting Bob and like whatever. But I don't remember like being like okay, come hang out with me and Bob and like I don't remember that. I don't remember it being like weird or awkward. So I'm pretty sure as soon as like I saw you guys together, your dynamic was completely normal couple. So it wasn't anything that I was like oh, ish. But in my mind, like when I was up at school and like I'm hearing these things mostly through S.
Yeah.
She's a little bit of a gossip herself. So I was like, okay, and I thought it was gonna be a lot more weird. But then when I saw you together with Bob versus you with your ex-boyfriend, it seemed so much more right. Like it just seemed more like your type of person.
Right.
And I think I personally get along better with Bob than I did your ex, but not because I didn't like him, just mostly because we didn't have a lot in common.
No.
So.
And obviously, like, I think I don't know when this was brought up. I think it was brought up on another podcast. But I had the biggest change. Mm-hmm. And I think that also because I started dating my ex in the 9th grade. So that was during that, like, huge transition period for me. Yeah. So I think I kind of started dating him before Slay became Slay. Mm-hmm. And I think just the person I became was a lot different. So that's why my choice in Bob just fit a lot better because I wasn't the person I started dating.
Yeah, and I think, everyone in 9th grade, we think about that, we're like 15? Like, you're not who you're going to be at 15. That's just the way it is. So it makes total sense that your tastes would change and your personality would change. But I think you're right. Out of everyone, at least in our friend group, you definitely had the biggest change. I think in personality / just the way you are as a person wise.
Became a lot more intense.
You did become a lot more intense.
A lot more intense.
Like, Slay was such a goody growing up. Like, you didn't really break rules.
Oh, absolutely not.
I think you were like terrified.
I didn't cuss. I didn't cuss at all. I thought that was like to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe people would even do that. I don't even remember when I started swearing. Total goody. I asked my mom if I could wear a purity ring. Like.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. I asked my mom if I could, like, own a purity ring.
I'm assuming she said yes. That's why.
Well, she actually said no.
Oh, what?
She said, I don't want to put that type of pressure on you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair.
So,
but I'm sure she supported the idea behind it. She just didn't want that to be a constant, like, thing hanging over your head.
Right. I mean, like I said, for how sheltered I was, my parents were really cool. Like, they were really chill and laid back.
Yeah, I think it was
more fine.
It was almost more to do, in some sense, with you and kind of just where you were at in your journey. Because, like you said, your parents probably would have let you do a lot more. You just didn't ask. And I think you were always so, like, I don't want to say, like, timid, but you were, like, almost afraid of breaking rules and stuff. Like, you didn't want to do stuff wrong.
I don't know. Timid, I would say.
As a kid, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, no. Like.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, as a child, if you would look at all of us and say, like, which one do you think is going to be scary or intimidating as an adult, nobody would ever have picked you. You were so like quiet and reserved, and now it's just like you're almost like a 180.
I know.
And it's like now like I would not fuck with you. Like I would lose. I would be afraid to get in a fight with you, at least a physical fight, I think.
Well, yeah, a physical fight.
I think a fight, like a verbal fight, I could probably hold my own, but and I could never see you as like a kid like going up and like even in like soccer, you were so aggressive. Once you got older, like we played soccer together as kids.
Yeah,
I don't think we talked about that in my podcast because soccer wasn't really a big part of my journey. No. I let it go pretty early on, but you played soccer throughout most of your life.
I've spend more time playing soccer than not.
Right.
So,
because how old were you when you started playing soccer?
5.
Okay, yeah, because I think I was not that. I think I started after you, but I think it was like first grade or something that I started because we did the like little TRSA or whatever.
Yeah, and I played before that. I played at like the community ed, and that's where I was first introduced to soccer. Because my parents, they threw me into this thing where every week it was a different sport, and then at the end of it, my mom was like, "What did you like?" Because that's what they were gonna sign me up for. Like what was your favorite? And they thought for sure I was going to pick softball because that was the most one I was into. Mm-hmm. But I just apparently looked my mom in the face and said, soccer. And they're like, oh, okay, good. That one's cheap. Thank God. So,
do you remember that one season of soccer that like our dads coached our team? It was like a false. It was like the 4v4.
No, it was probably miserable.
It was so weird because we had a coach or something and they like left, and so our dads like took over for part of the season.
I vaguely,
but it was like a 4v4.
But I don't.
We were like 7 or 8. Like it was, not a serious endeavor by any means. But like I could not imagine like our dads and like coaching us. That's so weird. One thing we haven't ever talked about here is our dads actually are like BFFs. Like
they get along our dads are so well. So yeah, they totally are. Like when we would always get really excited when our dads would come pick us up from each other's houses because we knew we'd had at least another hour to play.
Oh, always. Like it's like they never like would admit it because like they'd always make us clean up. I remember that. They'd always be like, hey, clean up, like,
we're here,
Cat's dad's on the way or whatever.
Right.
And so, gotta get going, clean up. And so we clean up and like for a while we'd always end up just like sitting on the stairs just like watching them talk like until we wised up and we're like, no, they're gonna talk for a while. So then we just started like continuing our business until forced to leave. But I thought that was really funny because I mean, my parents now live out of state, but when we were like growing up, we were only down the street from each other. Yeah. And so I thought that was kind of funny that I feel like our dads got along just as well as we did.
Oh my God. Yes. Even still to this day, what was it that recently, I wouldn't say it was your wedding because there was a lot going on at your wedding, but I felt like there was a get together and our parents got together and
it was
something like in your garage. I just remember like my dad and your dad talked for like hours. It was insane.
I can't remember what that is. I know, but I remember my dad talking around the time of my wedding because he was really excited that your parents were coming and H's parents and S's parents were supposed to come and then ended up not being able to come.
Right.
But I know my dad was really excited to get together with all the like parents again.
Yeah.
And he talked because he always called us the sleepover gang. That's what my dad's term was for us because we always asked like if we went over to each other's house to play on any weekend or if it was during the summer, we always went there to play and we would always call asking to do a sleepover eventually if it wasn't already planned. Like it was gonna be asked. And so when we were graduating high school, in the summer after we graduated high school, my dad wanted to host he called it the last sleepover, the sleepover gang.
Yeah.
So we all slept over at my house, and then he invited all of our parents over for like food and snacks and whatnot. And I feel like your parents either couldn't come or they weren't there for very long because your sister had something going on. So I don't remember. So they weren't there like super late, but I remember like he got dropped off. Or something otherwise. I think they chatted for a few minutes, but then they had to like go do something with their sister.
My parents were not there.
No, they weren't there for the most part. And I know S's parents, I think, actually stayed the longest, which I was surprised by. But
I do remember that.
Yeah, so like our parents hung out like upstairs chatting and like eating snacks, and we were all like downstairs doing sleepover things. I don't know what we were even doing, but
I don't know, probably something really stupid.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, 90% of what we did back then was really stupid.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. So yeah, I think it'd be cool at some point to get the 4 of us have done like more sleepovers now that me and S have moved back towards home.
Yeah.
But to get our parents together would be a kick in the head if we can ever make that happen. I don't know how and when that would be a situation that would arise, but yeah. So I mean that's I want to dig more into we talk about you flipping personalities almost or what do you think influenced that? Like what? So I would say
getting a boyfriend.
Boyfriends, but I think sports made you a little bit more aggressive. Because at first, when we played soccer together, you weren't very aggressive with it.
That's
but
true.
You got more and more intense.
Right. And I think, honestly, sports have influenced that tremendously, especially my intensity. Mm-hmm. Honestly, college sports probably grew that more because I realized what I was good at. Where in high school sports was a lot more political. So I didn't play the position I was meant to play. I didn't really do the best I could because it wasn't based on my skill. It was based on the politics of where people needed to fall.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, high school was great, and I did relatively well in soccer. I mean, I broke some stuff, so I wasn't able to play for a year. But for the most part, high school was okay. But then when college came around, that coach, he's my favorite coach. He really poured a lot of time into me, and I wasn't going to play. I walked into college and didn't even sign up for the team. And then one day, a really old teammate of mine was like, I didn't know you go here. And I was like, oh, yeah, hey, I go here. What's up? She goes, you are coming out to the field now. I was like, no, I'm not going to play. She goes, no, you're coming out to the field now and you're going to meet the coach. I was like, no, I don't think so. And she pretty much had to drag me out to the field. I had no equipment, had no interest in starting. And I talked to the coach, and he goes, okay, you're going to be here tomorrow, right? Tomorrow at 2? I was like, I guess. And so the next day, I showed up to practice, and mind you, we were halfway through the season.
Oh, really? I didn't know
right?
that.
No, so, like, I was totally convinced that I was not going to play sports in college. And I showed up halfway through the season, and I practiced, and everybody, like, gave their stamp of approval. They're like, yeah, this girl's pretty cool. We don't know her that well, but sure, we need more bodies on the field. And then 2 days later, we had our first game, and the starting forward for that team was going to miss that game. And so he was like, perfect, can you get all your documents in so you can play in this game? Because we need a forward, and I think that's going to be your spot. And I was like, sure. Like, I guess. I wasn't even going to be on a team, and now here I am trying to get all my shit together so I can play in this game. And we won, and I scored the only goals of the game.
Oh, wow.
So then, from that point forward, everybody on the team was like, you're on the team now, right? Like, yeah, you thought, no, you're on this team. And then from there on, that team was just so great, and I felt really secure in who I was. Like, I grew with that because I could be who I was a lot more. And then, yeah, I just felt like probably college I grew a lot as a person. High school, I was always really intense, but then college, it was really secure that, like,
yeah,
this is Slay now, and this is who I am, and
well, I think
here it is.
From an outside perspective, I think, like you said, you changed a lot when you got your first boyfriend.
Yes.
And I think going through that, and then once that relationship was over, that kind of left you with that freedom to be, like, the real Slay, like
right.
you're saying in college.
Right.
So, talk about your transition when you got your first boyfriend.
Right.
And you changed quite a bit.
Right. Because I realized that, oddly, I was, like, desirable. Like, okay, yeah, like, I thought that sounds really bad, but, like, I was homely looking, and I was disgusting, and I never had a first kiss until I had my first boyfriend in 9th grade, which is kind of a late bloomer in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, most kids at least have, like, a peck on the cheek in elementary school. Like, I had nothing. Like, no boys wanted to come anywhere fucking near me.
I didn't till like a year before you, so
I'm
kind of in the same boat, but we
were
like, both pretty homely.
Nobody wanted to come near me. And so when I got my first boyfriend, I realized I was, like, desirable in that, like, oh, people actually look at me. Oh, my God. And then I got a lot of confidence in that. And so I think that's where it kind of built off of. And so I think just a lot of the confidence piece came from that first relationship, because I realized, like, oh, people actually see me, and I'm not just this invisible slob of a person in the corner that is like, oh, gross, Slay is in oh, God, she's in this class.
Brush my hair.
Right. And so I think just a lot of confidence came from that, and then that just continued to compoundly build each year. And then college happened, and then I just grew into an insane person.
Right.
Who, yeah.
I think another interesting thing that I think may have had something to do with all of that change happening in high school is because your ex-boyfriend had a different group of friends than we did. I mean,
Yes.
when we talk about our group of friends, we're usually talking about the four of me, you, S, and H. But from that, we all had different friend groups we also were, I guess, a part of in some sense.
Right.
It's just those were always, like, the best friends, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that opened up because you hung out a lot with your ex-boyfriend's friends.
Yes, a lot.
And they were a pretty big group of people in our grade. I mean, the only time I really hung out with them was when I was going over, like, when I got invited by you to go to a bonfire or something.
Right.
So I didn't really get to know that group very well, but I think you did pretty well because you were there you were together for 4 years, so I think you got to know those guys a lot.
Yeah, and they were all sports guys too, so they were obviously a more intense group where you and H both played volleyball together, but neither of you were like super ultra passionate, super intense about it. So, I mean, nobody in our friend group was really athletes aside from me. I mean, not that you weren't athletes. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But all of his friends were. They were all very intense people. They all were very driven in their passions. And so I think just hanging around them also kind of, again, with the compound confidence thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. You were definitely the most athletic out of all of our friends. H and I played volleyball together. I really just did it to be in a sport and to, like, be active. I never had a super burning passion for volleyball. I honestly chose it because it was less running than soccer. And I liked the strategy behind it. I mean, it's not as confrontational as a lot of other sports. Because you're on opposite sides of a net. H was more intense with volleyball just because she played it a bit longer. Yeah. And she was a little more serious about it. But, like, I don't think she ever expected to play in college or anything like that. Like, I think she was more so, like, again, she was in it for to be in a sport, to be athletic as well. But I think she wanted to be, like, the varsity player while in high school. Like, that was, like, she didn't expect to have a career out of it, but she expected to do well. But I think you were the only one that played after high school.
Right.
But I think even throughout all that, I think because you made varsity pretty early on for soccer.
Yeah, I mean, it's sophomore year.
And myself and H both didn't make varsity till our senior year. And I made it more as just because I was a senior.
Right.
Because I played more on the JV team as a senior than I did I played in the varsity games like twice or three times, I think, that I even got any court time. Because my position there was 5 of us, and I was, like, the lowest on the totem pole of the 5. So I played more in the JV. So I think because you made varsity pretty young, at least compared to the rest of us, that just made you more serious about it earlier on.
Right. And I tried out for the high school team when I was still in middle school, and I got on. So, I mean, I also feel like in that regards, sports has always just been the main focus, even within my family. My dad extremely pushed sports because he thought if you're in a sport, it instills good morals, which I 100% agree with. Yep. I mean, you can still be a good person without playing sports, but, like, the team mentality and you're responsible for a team, and you have to be responsible for your time and being there, and people are relying on you. Yeah. I totally get that a lot more. Yeah, I mean, it's just more present being on a team, or even just being in a sport in general.
And even, I mean, sports included, but not stopping at that. You're pretty competitive in general.
Oh, extremely.
Like, to board games or anything.
Unreasonable degree.
Like, an example that I have thinking about how competitive Slay is and how I would define that to show people how competitive is that you decided to be a vegan for a while just to prove to your mom that you could. Like, just to win the battle, essentially.
Yep.
And most people wouldn't and you were pretty committed to that for quite a few months.
I still would be today if it wasn't for the fact that I got pregnant.
Right.
The only reason I stopped being vegan was because the doctor asked me to.
Yeah. And I think that just shows how headstrong you were in the fact that you were going to prove your mom wrong. And win.
Like, I was fully prepared to do it for life.
Which is pretty intense for like a 10-minute conversation you had with your mom.
Yes.
And to be like, hey, well, I'm changing my lifestyle now to prove to you that I could if I wanted to. So pretty competitive. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand into something that Bob mentioned earlier prior to us recording this, saying that something we should talk about is the fact that you tend to identify or be identified as villainous characters in media or TV shows.
Yeah.
Those tend to be the ones that speak to you the most, or like if other people describe you as a character.
Yeah.
Some examples we'll give. In Game of Thrones, you like Cersei the best.
Yes.
Which, if anyone out there is listening likes Game of Thrones, No one identifies with Cersei as their favorite character.
I do. She's the best.
And Xena, you like Callisto.
Yes, she's also the best.
Okay, well, I'm not going to argue it because it makes sense for you. And then in My Hero, you like Bakugo. Yes. Those are the three we were talking about recently. Yeah. Which are all, I mean, not necessarily are they all on the same level of villainy, but they all have quite an adverse, I guess, following.
They're polarized, like, they're not the typical good guy by any means.
Like, and I think even when they are, so like Bakugo isn't technically a villain, right?
He's a hero.
He is a hero, but he is the polar opposite of the main character. So when you're watching any sort of TV show, generally you identify or at least follow mostly with the main character or the main protagonist. And so I think that you always tend to kind of pick characters that are not that
absolutely.
person.
I don't think I can honestly think of a single protagonist that I identify as.
Right. So I think that's pretty interesting because most people wouldn't. It's one thing for other people to like say like, oh, like when I was talking about Xena, I was like, the reason I had you watch an episode with Callisto was like, this is you as a character and you need to watch it because you're gonna love her.
Right.
So coming from outside, it's one thing, but you even like for yourself, like Bakugo, you say is most like you in that show, and that makes sense because he's not a full out like bad guy. He's not like murdering people, but
well, his name is Lord Explosion Murder,
so that's true.
That's neither here nor there.
So what? I mean, I guess I want to know more about that. Why do you think that is that you're drawn to those?
Just the intensity. So usually when it's a bad guy, they're very intense about it. Like they're very goal driven.
That's true. It's fair.
Like they're very goal driven. Like conquering the world, killing, revenge, whatever it is, that's their goal and they're running with it. So that I think I identify with because I'm extremely goal driven, which is why, like, again, relating back to sports, when I stopped soccer, I now got into powerlifting because I needed a goal because I was working out and I was like, well, this is stupid. Yeah. I don't see any purpose in this.
Yeah.
So I had to make it into something. So that, and B, they're like unapologetically themselves completely. Like, this is who I am, this is my goal, and I'm running towards it. Stop me if you can.
That's true.
So
I think one thing I notice about a lot of those characters, too, is that, like, even if people doubt what they're doing, they're going to prove them wrong and say, I'm doing what I want to do.
Absolutely.
Which I think I would define as you, like, in the sense that you're also, you're pretty open with, like, if this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it. Like, you tell it how it is. I mean, you don't pussyfoot around it. I mean, if people are like, oh, like, you're going to be vegan, you're like, yeah, I'm going to be fucking vegan for the rest of my life so I can prove to my mom that I could do it. Like, it's not like you kind of are ever flip-floppy. Like, you're set on it as soon as you set a goal and then you follow through. And I think, like you were saying with powerlifting, that made sense. Like, when you started getting into that, I mean, you haven't really faltered. I mean, the injury and pregnancy aside.
Right.
Because that doesn't really count. You've pretty much met, I mean, or at least in my opinion, you've met most of the goals you've been setting, or at least the ones that you first started with. I mean, obviously you're going to keep setting new goals.
Right.
But coming from where you started from to now, I think is a huge improvement on, like, just even, like, the knowledge, I would say, behind lifting and how, like, what to do for what works, what doesn't work.
I mean, I got super into fitness after soccer because I needed an outlet still because I've always been an athlete and just not being physically fit or at least active in some way, shape, or form was not even an option in my head. So got into going to the gym because what else are you going to do to be active if you're not in a sport, what are you going to do, right? Yeah. So I started going to the gym and then I stopped. It was stupid because there was no goal. And then I started poking on the internet, and I already kind of explained this, but I found bodybuilding first, but I really wanted to stay away from bodybuilding for two reasons. A, I think it's more of a pageantry than an actual, like, physical ability thing, because you're just prancing around on stage in a bikini.
Yep.
And B, based on who I know myself pretty well and how intense I am and how intense I can be, and I 100% can see myself developing an eating disorder with
Yeah.
bodybuilding. I mean, even with my tracking the food now, I get a little obsessive. Intense and obsessive with it. And I think if I...
She counted up 7 chips earlier.
Yes, I did.
Put that there. 7 chips. Yes.
And I think if I was in bodybuilding that so heavily relied on that, I would absolutely develop some sort of eating disorder. So I kind of wanted to stay away from that because I knew, obviously that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I want to stay away from that. And then I found powerlifting. And then I was like, well, this seems awesome because this is exactly what I wanted. Like, it's a physical ability. I can prove to people I am better than them, which is my goal entirely. Like, if I can prove to somebody I am better than them, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is also probably why I identify as the bad guy, because
that's usually their goal as well.
I mean, that's also their goal. But, and then I just obviously jumped in head first and learned as much as I could about it. Studied it to the point that I could probably, if I wanted to, become a personal trainer.
Absolutely.
If I went into it more and wanted to get all the certifications and stuff, but that requires money.
It does.
So
it's expensive.
It's really expensive.
Because I thought about that for a while too, and then I was like, no, fuck that.
So maybe one day, I through my work, if I decided to be in HR at a different company, I could still potentially stay at my current employer though and just work as a personal trainer, and I'm sure they would help me with that training and stuff.
One nice thing is a lot of places that have personal trainers will help you get certified and all that.
Right.
The studio that I taught Zumba classes at didn't like help pay for it or anything, and it wasn't like because I was mostly there for group fitness classes. It was not a necessity, so that's why I didn't end up ever doing it. But I thought about it because I was like, I really like teaching Zumba. I like helping people achieve their goals, which I guess in my professional career is what I do. It's just a different type of goal.
Right.
Now I'm helping people retire instead of losing weight, but I think you would be a terrifying personal trainer. Like you would scare me into probably either A, you would be really effective because I think people would be afraid to like let you down, or B, you would scare people away and they wouldn't come back because they would be afraid of you.
One or the other.
Because you would be very intense, I think, you're leading them. That's your job.
Right. And I feel like if I can do it, anybody can. So, like, if you're slacking, like, GTFO. Like, why are you here? If you are not on my level of playing, you might as well be gone. No.
So you mentioned that you get, like, when you get into something, you could dive head first and worrying about with bodybuilding and, like, eating disorders. That aside, how, I guess, in the sense that, so now you're powerlifting and you have goals set for yourself, how do you stop yourself from still going too extreme, like, with your calorie counting, per se?
So, that's the great thing about powerlifting is because it is, the heavier you are, the actual, like, the better you are, because the more mass you have, the more mass you can lift. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, to be the smallest I could possibly be would not necessarily be the best for for competition, because that would mean I couldn't lift as heaviest weights. So as long as I'm staying within a weight range, which is why it's kind of like it's set up, if you weigh between this and this, you're in this category and you get scored at that category. Mm-hmm. And they actually prefer you to be at the top of that. So you want to be at the top of that weight thing because you're the heaviest you can be, which means you can lift more weights under that mass. So that I think overall is just a lot better outlook versus with bodybuilding, it's all based on height. So if you're in the category of like, I'm taller, I can be skinnier. Yeah. So you can go in that direction. The smaller you are, that's obviously a little bit better because you can show more definition. Mm-hmm. And you want to cut carbs or whatever whatever you need to do for that. So I just think it's a different way of looking at it, where you still want to be in a healthy weight range for like your body type, but you want to be at the upper end of it. So that's why you're constantly eating more food. Like you want to eat more proteins. And when I was going for my first competition, I actually wasn't counting any calories because I needed to gain 8 pounds to be at the top of that weight category. So I think that just overall has probably been the best. Yeah,
I mean, it definitely puts you within guidelines.
Right.
But even outside of calories, I mean, I think out of all of us, you tend to push yourself the hardest to the point where you've gotten quite a few injuries.
Oh.
I mean, you're injury prone in general, but like,
right.
I feel like, how do you stop yourself from going too hard and injuring?
And that's why I have all these injuries. Like right now, Kat, you've been yelling at me for a while because of this potential stress fracture I have in my knee. And I'm continuing to run 4 to 6 miles a day.
Which is like, first of all, running 46 miles in a day, it's a very daunting.
Well, I don't do it all at once. I work out twice a day.
But it's still 2 to 3 miles at a time, twice a day. Like, that's a lot. I have had problems with my knees since I played volleyball. So, like, I have to tape up my knees and do the whole 9. And I'm thinking, if I had a stress fracture, like, I wouldn't even walk 4 to 6 miles a day, much less, like, the impact of running.
I have a really high pain tolerance, though. I've learned from all my injuries. Like, it kind of scares me because it's pretty high.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that made childbirth easier for you. So.
Well, honestly, childbirth was really easy, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear that because they're like, that bitch.
Fuck you.
She had an easy time. Fuck her.
So, yeah, I think, I think the powerlifting makes a lot of sense for you. Mm-hmm. You've always pretty much had that goal mindset. Like, as you said, you work in HR, and you picked that at a pretty young age.
Yep, 8th grade.
Like, nobody in 8th grade.
7th grade.
Okay, nobody in 7th grade generally even knows what they want to do, and if they do, it's never HR. Like, I've never heard a 13-year-old come to me like,
I was very realistic.
HR. Like, most of the time they're like, I want to be a cop, or I want to be a doctor.
Well, if I told myself, so I did have a fantasy job, one of the classics, and that was to be a police officer. Mm-hmm. And I told myself after I graduated, I gave myself a year, and if I could not find a job within my career field, I was going to go to academy to be a police officer.
You'd be a terrifying police officer.
I know. I think I'd be really fucking good at it.
You probably would be really good at it, but it is dangerous, and you do have a family now, so it makes more sense to do what you're doing, because I guess I've never seen you at your current job, but I'm assuming you're good at it, and you're efficient.
I hope so.
And
I haven't canned me yet, so
I think the fact that you're a pretty open book with people, like if you had to put somebody in their place and say, like, this is what you're supposed to be doing because I'm HR and you listen to me, like, you would just do it. I don't think that would be something that would be... I don't think firing people or, like, having those tough conversations with people would be something that would scare you away.
And that's where I thought I would be good at it, because the idea of making hard decisions, I feel like, is probably what I'm best at, is making hard decisions and following through on them.
Yeah. And I agree, because you are... if I had a dilemma in my brain where I'm like, for example, I'm going to try on a wedding dress, let's say, and which friend would I go to see, like, do you actually like this on me? Like, you would tell me if I looked like a frumpy mess, you'd be like, it's a hot mess, take it off.
Girl.
And then, like, that's what, we all need those people in our lives. Like, I'm not the same. I sugarcoat things. Like, I'm honest, I don't necessarily like being like, oh, you look so good. But, like, I still always try to pick out the good things about it. Like, I'm never just bluntly being like, you look fat. I might be like, with those pants, maybe if you just tried a different top, like, it would be cute. Like, I would try to, like, make it sound better, but still kind of at the same time be, like, mildly, like, maybe not that. But you're like, no, bitch, you're hideous. Take it off. And as much as at times some people might think that's a negative because you could hurt people's feelings, but I think that's a positive because we all need those people to, like, let us know things.
I don't know. I think when people call me a bitch, I find that as a giant compliment. And my sister had to explain that to her boyfriend because we were talking about it, and Bob called me a bitch flat out, and he was, like, taken aback by it. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just called him a bitch. And my sister's like, oh, no. She likes that. It's a compliment.
It's like a term of endearment.
Right. Like, I fully embrace bitch. I fully embrace every slur word you can call a woman, because that just means I'm being...
And I think a lot of those terms, though, when thrown at women, like bitch or things like that, a lot of times it's just because those are women that are more authoritative. Right. Or they don't fit the classic, like, feminine damsel in distress role. Right. I think that's where a lot of that comes from, and I think that's why... and I would agree with you. When people are calling you a bitch, it doesn't mean, like, what you're doing is bad. It just means that you're making them uncomfortable with the fact that you're not falling into that classic box. Right. And I can see that as being in term of endearment. I haven't actually been called a bitch seriously that often. By, like, each other, but that's...
I've been called a bitch seriously multiple times.
But I've gotten, like... people think I have resting bitch face, which I guess I do. that's more my judgy side, which we talked about in my interviews. I admit that I'm a very judgy person. I'm going to judge you.
Right.
It could be good. I'm not saying it's going to be bad, but you're going to be judged if you're in my line of vision.
That's just Kat.
But I am more internal about it. I don't come out and just blatantly say, like, you look a hot mess, take that off. I just kind of internalize it, and I'm like, okay, like, let's assess the situation. And you wear it on your sleeve, and that probably just intimidates people into being like, oh, she's just a bitch. But not really, because what you're saying isn't, you're not lying about it. You're not saying you look a hot mess just to make people feel bad, at least not to me in general, or I hope not. But maybe there's people
I wouldn't put it past me.
Yeah, and people you dislike, but I'm saying, like, when we're talking about our friend group, and if we're asking your opinion, I don't think you would say something just to hurt our feelings. Like, you'd just be like, well, this is how it is.
I'm not a monster.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I'm not a heartless person.
I mean, there's times. You don't know.
Well.
So there's a question that we all had to answer, and it's
Absolutely.
your favorite question.
Yes.
To ask people, and we all dreaded this question because, at least the rest of us, not you, because you, I'm sure, had your answers picked prior to even asking us.
Yep.
And it's, which 3 fictional characters do you identify the most with?
So, surface level, Rapunzel from Tangled, because she's blonde-haired, green-eyed, little ditzy, little stupid, naive, and all around just kind of girly, because as intense as I am, I wear dresses constantly.
Oh yeah, makeup.
I do the whole makeup, whole 9 yards. I do my hair. Like, if you were just to see me on the street, you would say she's a total girly girl.
Yeah. Like a Black Widow in that sense, where like your appearance is important to you. But
well, with powerlifting, when I tell people I'm a powerlifter and I give them some of my stats because I'm actually relatively good at it, it blows them away because they're like, that's so you're so unsuspecting, and I kind of like that because it's like, yeah, fuck with me, I dare you. I fucking dare you. So Rapunzel. Next would be Regina George.
Yes, bitch.
Similar in the regards to, I mean, obviously she's blonde and she wears feminine clothes, but she is a fucking bitch. And
she's a force to be reckoned with.
Right, and she is kind of a little bit, she does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, which, I mean, I will fully admit I've done my fair share of behind the scenes bullshit. Especially with a baptism in S. That was fully intentional. Well, kind of half intentional, but I didn't care about it.
Right.
So, I mean, and she usually gets her way, and she has a goal, and she will do what it takes for her to get her way to win, essentially. And I mean, I'm not, like, low blows, I don't care about honor. In those regards, like, if it gets me what I need, I will do it. So, Regina George. And then Ashley Spinelli from Recess.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because she's a total tomboy. She runs with the guys. She's also a force to be reckoned with. And, I mean, you don't fuck with Ashley Spinelli at Recess. No. Like, you're just like, yeah, she's, yeah.
No, I'd be hanging out with, what was his name, Mikey? Is that the big guy?
Yeah.
That's who I'd be hanging out with.
Right.
He's on my level.
And so, and that's just me in general, because I'm a pretty, I mean, I love pickup sports. I'm a total tomboy. I act like one of the boys. Like, although I wear dresses and I do my makeup, I also have crude and lewd language. And
it's a nice way of putting it.
And my preferences also kind of lie on the side of a little bit more, like, I don't know, guy brain in general. Like, I talk about sex constantly.
Yeah.
And stuff of that nature, so.
Well, I think, like, with your choices, I agree with all of what you said, and it actually is really surprising to me because we've heard throughout multiple podcasts that you're a pretty big weeb, right? Like,
oh,
you're super
absolutely.
into anime and all that. And the fact that you picked all characters that are pretty popular in pop culture, not necessarily the stuff that you're interested in.
Right.
So I like that you picked traits more than you picked characters. So it's not like you're like, oh, Regina George is my favorite character to ever grace television.
Right.
But you picked the traits, which I like that. I agree with what you said. The Rapunzel one was the most surprising, I would say, just because she's a little bit more dainty.
Right. I mean, she's probably the one that's most out there, but I have to encapsulate that side of me because I'm pretty feminine.
You are, yeah.
In regards to, like,
You're
certain
an
aspects.
interesting hybrid because most people, like like to categorize girls as being a girly girl or a tomboy. And, like,
Right.
first of all, I think that's not fair because I feel like it's not one or the other.
Right.
And this is 2019, and there shouldn't just be two gender roles that you can
Right.
play with. But you are a pretty interesting mix because you're very, like, you're tough. You like you said, you play with the boys, you sports, but your appearance-wise, you would never expect it.
Right.
Because you are always wearing dresses and doing your makeup, getting your hair all cute, and
You would not believe how many broken bones I've had, and or just overall
yeah,
tenacity in certain
that's
aspects.
fair. That's fair. Speaking of your broken bones, I just have to mention the fact that how did you tear your ACL? Just tell that story real quick because I think it's one for the books.
Not in a sport at all. It was at church. So that speaks volumes. I was at a place where people are usually at peace, and we were playing dodgeball with 6th graders, and I have to win. I don't care who my victims are. So we were playing everybody's at dodgeball, and I was performing the move called the kamikaze, where you sprint at a young child at full speed, jump as high as you can in the air so that you block all their vision, like all they can see is this giant mass of a human coming at them, and then you drill a ball as hard as you can directly on top of them because then they can't get away because it's
in their face.
It's in their face. Well, I did it, executed it perfectly. The child immediately got out and cried, but no, he didn't cry, but.
Probably did after he saw your nasty leg.
Upon the event of me coming to the ground, I destroyed my entire knee. So it caved inwards. So knees usually bend out. This one bent in, and I destroyed all the cartilage in my knee, destroyed the entire meniscus in my knee, and snapped the living fuck out of my ACL and partially tore my MCL. So
intense.
my entire knee was blown out. And then I just lied there on the ground because I was like, I think I hurt myself. So as the children continued to play for the next 10 minutes, I just laid on the court while these children continued to play,
Oh my gosh.
contemplating what I needed to do next. I then stood up, found a chaperone, and then walked myself to the hospital. Well, I walked myself to the car and then drove myself to the hospital. And was
Yeah.
like, I think I hurt my knee. And they're like, oh, you don't have a knee.
You obliterated it.
How are you standing and walking?
And my favorite phrase from the story you just told is you said at the very beginning that you're very competitive, you have to win, and it doesn't matter who your victims are.
Absolutely.
Not her competition, her
No,
victims.
my victims.
You have the mentality of these 6th graders are all going to be my victims. And that, I think, comes full circle with what we talked about earlier, the fact that you like to identify with villains.
Right.
And they're like, it's not necessarily that these people are bad people you're going against, but
Well, the
like,
kids
they're going
loved
down.
to play with me because I was like the biggest target. Obviously, all the kids tried to gang up on me because
Yeah.
I was the one taking it by far the most serious.
Yeah.
And that just made it more fun because they
And
were
you're,
just
I
like,
mean,
meh.
you're an adult-sized human, so
Oh
it's
yeah, I was by
bigger target for them
Right.
versus like the little other 6th graders running around.
So the boys loved playing dodgeball with me. They always asked if we could always play dodgeball, and that was their favorite thing because that was their entire thing was, can we get Slay out? If we could get Slay out, that mission accomplished.
And I think it's important to note that this story we're talking about, she's saying she's playing with 6th graders. This was like a year ago. This was not when we
Oh,
were
no.
like in high school or something.
No, this was a year ago.
This is full adulthood.
I was 24 years old, and they were
And
11.
well, they got what they asked for. They got a serious player. So
Yes.
good. Well, I mean, we're cutting it close on time. Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners about who is Slay?
An intense fucking badass, and come at me if you fucking dare. I'll take you.
Unless it's board games, in which case, maybe not, because I can beat you at those.
Well, that's because I'm dumb. Like,
You're
I'm
not dumb.
I'm pretty, I think I'm the stupidest one of our friend group, far and away.
Okay.
By a lot.
Stupid by what means, though? Because there's street smarts and there are book smarts. And I would say we have a particular friend that might not have the street
I'm
smarts.
smarter street smarts than her. But, like, in general, I can't say words right. And we
players would pick on you for it.
we constantly slam on my grammar. We constantly slam on how I speak because I can't fucking say English. And that's why I identify as Rapunzel, because she's dumb.
She got the ditzy side
She's
to her.
actually pretty retarded, and I'm pretty sure I'm actually retarded, so.
Well, I wouldn't go as far to say that. But, I mean, you have your moments. You're the blonde of the group. We'll just leave it at
absolutely.
that. So, all right. Well, that was, I think, your interview with Slay.
Yeah.
So you finally get to hear about her after listening to her ask us questions for the last however many of these you've listened to. But she was the
probably none of them because they were all dumb.
Yeah, there's probably no one
And
listening to
this
this
one,
either.
you're not
Like, they're
listening
like,
to this one
who the
either.
fuck cares about these people? But yeah, that is Slay, and I guess moving forward, now we know a little bit more about each of us, and when we're podcasting, you know what viewpoints we tend to come from, because I think that's what this little mini series has been really about. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next week with a different topic, which I don't know what it'll be, because we'll decide that the day before. Bye.
Bye.